From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast.
Hello.
Good evening.
I'm going to say this up front. I hope that our listeners enjoy this podcast as much as we're going to enjoy making it. David had this idea. He wanted to talk about some of the great sights of Jerusalem. And I said, David, forget that. Let's go to a distillery.
I don't have a problem with that whatsoever.
So David and I have come to the Thinkers Distillery in Machane Yehuda in Jerusalem. It has only been running for a couple of years. They make some of the best gin, vodka and bourbon that you can find in Israel.
This is the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition, but we're not moving very far. So anyway, we're now actually being photographed not only by our friends who are in the background, but by other people here as well. They're wondering what on earth is going on.
What's on the show today, David?
So we'll be going to Thinkers Distillery in Jerusalem, and then are we going to own up about what's happening in as well?
Talking about holy water, we will go to a city full of water.
And lots and lots and lots of churches.
Venice.
Let's go to the questions.
Question number 1. Where does the name gin come from?
And question number 2. How many canals are there in Venice to the nearest 10?
I'm going to get David a very strong cup of coffee, and we will join you after the break.
The answers at the end of the pod.
Israel is the startup nation, the scale-up nation, the unicorn country. Join me, Maayan Hoffman, Jerusalem Post Deputy CEO, Strategy and Innovation.
And me, Zachy Hennessy, the J-Post Business and Tech and Innovation Correspondent for our analysis of the most critical Israeli tech innovations today.
In each episode of Inside Israeli Innovation, we'll highlight a new tech trend, discuss the latest innovation news, and interview at least one of Israel's most promising companies.
So if you like to know what's on the cutting edge, then this Jerusalem Post show is for you.
Listen to Inside Israeli Innovation on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In the introduction, we promised you alcohol. And unfortunately, of course, unless you're opening a bottle yourself as you're listening to this, you will just have to listen to Mark and I talking about alcohol and hopefully maybe tasting a little bit of alcohol in the company of our hosts.
We are joined by the founder of this fabulous distillery. He goes by the name of Bennett Kaplan, but he's asked me to call him Sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the obedience.
This is going to be one of those interviews, isn't it?
Yes, I think I need another gin before we carry on.
Tell us where we are and what it is that you do.
You're sitting in Thinkers Distillery Visitor Center. The Visitor Center is on this side of the glass walls, and the other side of the glass walls is the actual distillery. That's the operating distillery. 100% of our products are manufactured there. And here, this visitor center is designed to give people an understanding of what it is that we do. Distilling is something that's quite new in Israel. There are only a handful of distilleries, so people are quite curious about what goes on in distilleries, which, by the way, is true everywhere in the world. Distilleries are very well visited. We receive about 1,000 guests here a month.
Why did you choose to open a distillery next to Machane Yehuda Market in the center of Jerusalem?
The distilling business has gone absolutely crazy in the last 25 years. Since 1999, it's one of the fastest growing industries in the world in the super premium level. It's had growth of close to 15% a year. People always say to me, oh, you must be an alcoholic, and that's why you started a distillery. No, I started the distillery because I'm a pragmatic businessman, and I felt that this was an industry that I wanted to get into. The reason it's in Israel is because that's where I live, and the reason it's next to Shuk Machane Yehuda is because it's the second most touristed location in Jerusalem, and we wanted to basically have people from all over the world come to see us. Jerusalem has become, once again, kind of like a center of the world, and people come through here all the time and come to our distillery.
The Bible, the Torah, talks about the 7 species. On top of that, we can add in oranges and the other citrus fruits. Those are sort of the well-known products that you would associate with Israel, maybe with Jerusalem. But whiskey and gin and vodka, they ain't really things that you would associate with this city.
That's correct.
Here's your gin and tonic.
Thank you very much indeed. But before you answer the question, can you tell us what we have in front of us?
I don't know.
You're having right now a gin and tonic with the dry gin, the Jerusalem Dry. You're having a vodka tonic because you didn't answer me, and I'm guessing you like the vodka tonic. You're also getting the vodka tonic.
Thank you, Anat. Back to the question. This idea that the biblical association of the 7 species, how do you get from that to these 3 spirits?
The same way we get to AI and chip manufacturing, which also isn't part of the Shiva Minium, the 7 species. It has nothing whatsoever to do with that. I looked at industries that I felt would be a good industry that I had the talent to go into and to break into, and distilling was one of the primary ones. And basically all the distillers anywhere are importing everything anyway. The other distillers in Israel are importing all of their grain from overseas because we don't produce a good grain for distilling. So and the whole world has gone that way. The whole world has become internationalized to the point where everything is shipped all over the place. I always tell people, you want to buy a German car, don't buy a Porsche. It's made all over the place, and everything is aggregated. Historically, all of the distilleries were located next to farms because that's where the raw material was, and it was cheap, and the master distillers themselves were farmers, and they were just looking for ways to preserve their grain rather than just putting it in a silo and waiting for somebody to come. And that is how the whole thing got started, but that's not how you make the best product anymore. They're not growing the best grains next to your farm. They don't have the best botanicals next to your farm. So everybody who's in the super premium level, what we call the furthered level, which is our way of explaining what we do, everybody is sourcing materials from all over the world. The great distilleries in Scotland are buying their barley. They used to buy it from the Ukraine. I don't know where they're getting it from now. But everybody's importing. Everybody's finding the best products that they can and bringing it together. And an urban distillery is basically saying that.
Where does the name Thinkers come from?
Oh, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Most of the existing distilleries in the world were built by farmers, and they were buying what was close and cheap. And most of them were all started in the late 1800s. The people who wrote those recipes in the late 1800s really didn't understand chemistry. The periodical table of the elements was kind of new, and it certainly wasn't full. The science of taste and smell is only 15 years old. Right? So all of the things that you need to be a really fabulous high-end distiller is information that's current. So those people over there, back then in the late 1800s, they would have given their right arm to have access to the information that the average person has today, the average school kids. But we're not average. We're Israelis. We always try to do things better. What is everybody else doing, and how do we make it better? That's why we call it furthered, because that's what Israelis do. They further things. And that is what we did here. In the spirit of being an Israeli company is we just took what everybody else did and we furthered it.
Shall we?
I think we should. Cheers.
L'chaim. What do you say in the States?
You really want to know the official American toast? Damn the torpedoes.
Mark, I'm going to have a sip, so I think you've already had a go.
I'm halfway through mine.
You're always ahead of me.
I didn't wait to be asked.
So you can explain while I'm tasting.
That means I have to put mine down. Okay. I've had quite a few sips of my gin and tonic.
Ooh.
This is the dry gin.
Ooh.
It's very nice.
Well, since we've got the staff and the owners around us, we have to say it's very nice. But I'll be honest, I'm not a gin person. You like gin more than I do.
I do.
To me, it seems very smooth, very nice, very palatable, potable.
I like flavoured gin a lot, but when you strip it back to proper basic gin, sometimes it can be a little harsh, and the tonic and the gin don't mix. Here, it's a really good blend, really smooth. You can taste the gin, but it doesn't overwhelm, and you can taste the tonic. And again, I think they make a fabulous combination.
While we've been chatting, your colleague has brought out 4 bottles. Can you explain what we're looking at?
This tall one here in the middle is our vodka bottle. The vodka bottle was the first product that we created. Not the vodka bottle, the vodka itself. The bottle design itself, which won quite literally like the most important design awards in the world, is a celebration of all of the furtherings that we felt deserved to be on a bottle. So it starts with the celebration of life, which is creation, love, peace, Ben Franklin discovering electricity, and it goes on and on and on, music, the solar system, all the way down to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which is the cornerstone of quantum mechanics, and on the front, the Sefirot of Kabbalah, the 10
The attributes?
attributes of Kabbalah, that's good, that comprise the world. And basically what we've got on here is all of the things that have happened in the world that have elevated the world from what it was to something much better. And that is the thinker's motif. That's what we try to follow. Next to this, we have a bottle of bourbon. And this bourbon was originally distilled by us. My team, we rented a distillery in Columbus, Ohio, and we aged it there, and then we put it on a ship for 6 months. We took a long trip to Israel, and then we put it on the shores of Haifa, outdoors. And after about 4.5 years, it had reached what we considered to be perfection.
As you mentioned, there's a visitor centre here. That's the showroom of the business. This is how you promote the business in Jerusalem. How do people come and visit the distillery and enjoy an hour, a couple of hours in your company or in the company of guides here?
And not who served us as our primary guide. We have 3 full-time people who do give tours, because there are a lot of tours here. One way is you can come for an hour tour, which is basic tour. In that you get a cocktail and a tasting of all of our products. Then we have what we call a deep dive tour, which goes more into detail into what we do differently in the history of alcohol. It's a kind of like a tour of NASA. You leave an expert and you get a second cocktail at the end. We also rent the distillery to groups. We probably have about 15 groups a month of 40, 50 people that come through, everything from like birthright kind of tours to companies. And they also get a tour and a tasting. We've also done weddings and bar mitzvahs in here, but that's just because people love the environment. So when you come here, you leave an expert.
What about ordering from wherever anybody happens to be listening to this podcast?
Well, we have a website, and we do deliver directly to the consumer, but we also are distributed by one of the largest and the finest distributor in Israel, Hakerem. They've been in business for over 100 years. It's a family-owned business. They're one of the 4 largest in the country, and they've got us in 600 locations throughout the country, so it's pretty easy to find us. Overseas, we're distributed in America through Royal Wine in New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. We're distributed by Total Wine, the largest. In the rest of America, we have a distributor in Canada. We have a distributor in the UK. We have a distributor in Morocco, believe it or not. We're expanding. By the way, we only came on the market last September.
And the website is?
thinkersdistillery.com.
Bennett, thank you for the gin, mainly, but also for your time.
You're welcome for the gin and my time. It was my pleasure.
Jerusalem Fact File. El Al flies to Ben Gurion Airport from most major European cities, plus New York, Boston, Miami, Los Angeles and Johannesburg. Air Canada, BA, Cathay, Delta, United and Virgin all fly direct to Tel Aviv. Turkish and Emirates offer excellent connections to Ben Gurion. There's an excellent, inexpensive train service from just outside arrivals at Ben Gurion, with buses and taxis also available for the 35-minute journey to Jerusalem. There are hotels and hostels to suit most budgets, but be aware Jerusalem is an expensive city. Our hotel recommendations include the brand new Teatron opposite the Jerusalem Theatre, the colonial King David overlooking the old city walls, and for budget travellers, the Abraham Hostel is very popular. There's little to no chance of rain from May to September, with July and August hot in the day but cool at night. There can be heavy downpours in the winter months, even occasional snow, but the days can often be warm. The currency is the Israeli shekel. $100 will buy you 373 shekels as of the end of May 2023. Outside of Machane Yehuda, Jerusalem offers many food styles. If you don't keep kosher, it's well worth dining in the Arab quarter of the Old City. Kosher options include piccolino, eucalyptus, and the old favourite ima.
And now the latest news with the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Haifa Port has engaged the leading cruise port designer Bermelo, Ajamil and Partners to design Israel's first purpose-built cruise terminal. The company has designed ports in Miami, Galveston, Singapore, amongst many others. The new terminal will enable Haifa to cope with the rapid expansion of cruising in Israel, with Haifa now acting as home port to 10 different cruise lines and handling 380,000 outgoing and 250,000 incoming passengers.
Rosh Hashanah is traditionally the time Jewish pilgrims make the trip to Uman in Ukraine to visit the graveside of famed Rabbi Nachman Mibreslav. With the Jewish New Year holiday just around the corner, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky threatened to deny access to Israeli visitors if Israel fails to renew benefits for Ukrainian refugees living in Israel.
E&P Reisen, a German ski holiday company, allegedly told two Orthodox Jewish families they would not be allowed to stay in their properties. Swiss newspaper Blick spoke with E&P Reisen, who reportedly confirmed the company would not rent to Haredim. The company says damage is often so great that repairs cannot be carried out in time for the following reservations.
Ben Gurion Airport is breaking all records this summer, with more than 2.5 million passengers in July, causing significant overcrowding. Ben Gurion's capacity is around 30 million passengers per year, meaning Israel will either need to build a new airport or block the expansion of new routes.
Talking of new routes, how about Vietnam and Sri Lanka? From October 2023, Vietjet Air will be operating twice weekly flights between Israel and Hanoi. Arkia will be operating weekly direct flights to the popular island of Sri Lanka, loved by Israeli surfers. Bluebird Airlines launched a new Tel Aviv-Barcelona route after Wizz Air announced it is stopping flights.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris.
Mate, you keep posting pictures on the internet. I'm not there.
It's nice. I tell you what, you've been away a couple of times without me. I've been away a couple of times without you. And I miss the banter, the good chat, the cheer. I miss getting drunk because my current travel partner is not much of a drinker. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun also to do something that's not pressured, because I don't have a tape recorder with me and I'm just having vacation and decided to get on the blower with you and give a report from a destination.
So where have you gone?
Not that far. I'm sort of in the Mediterranean area, actually the Adriatic, actually a lagoon, actually Venice. It's too romantic for you and me. I don't want tongues wagging yet again. My wife wouldn't be able to cope. So Debbie and I, that's my wife, have come away for her 25th wedding anniversary.
When's your 25th wedding anniversary?
Oh, I don't do such things.
I've been trying to find out where you've been going for ages. You wouldn't tell me. It's the first time I think you've kept a secret ever.
I am terrible at keeping secrets. And I decided when I booked these tickets about 3 months ago, that if I was keeping it as a surprise from my good lady, I was going to keep it a surprise from absolutely everybody. And you weren't the only one to be a little bit angry with me when I wouldn't say. And everybody said, I'm not going to tell her. It was a challenge. I also decided if my wife doesn't know, why should anybody else know before her? So there you go. That's why.
It's fine. I will take my revenge by not telling you that I'm going to Edinburgh later in the year. So why have you picked Venice?
Well, the first reason, to be perfectly honest, and remember you and I live in Israel, was that of all the potential destinations that I would want to go to, the flights were the cheapest. Originally, I was going to book with Wizz, which is a low-cost airline in both directions. And then I noticed that El Al was flying out earlier in the morning, departure day from Tel Aviv. It was about $50 more expensive, but it gave me a full day extra. So I got a really good price, paid a little bit more just to get that extra time. So we're sort of here for 5 days instead of 4.
You skimped and saved on your romantic silver wedding anniversary trip with your wife. Have you at least spent some money while you've been there on her?
So that's something that you and I have discussed on the pod before, is do you want to travel business class? When I got to the El Al check-in desk, a very nice lady said to me, would you like to spend another $400 and you can go business? And the answer immediately is no, because if I did have $400 spare, I would be spending it on higher level entertainment, maybe a better hotel, etc., etc. And again, as you and I have talked about in the past, I opted to go for Airbnb partly because of keeping kosher and so on. It allows us to do our own thing, but also I was able to bring the cost of this stay down significantly. So the Airbnb that we've got is very modest, it's very nice, but I think that if we had a hotel room of a similar standard, it would be significantly more.
So you've spent nothing on flights, you've spent nothing, and you're staying in a shoebox. Are you at least lavishing money on things to do in Venice? And is it expensive?
Absolutely, we are lavishing it. The great thing about my wife, during the year, she's fairly sort of tight with money. So if I say, Debbie, I've ordered another Manchester City football shirt, she sort of rolls her eyes and thinks, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But when we go away, she says, look, let's have fun. Let's not skimp and save and enjoy ourselves. So is Venice an expensive place? Yes, it is. If you're going to stay in a 5-star hotel on the Grand Canal, eat in the fanciest Michelin-starred restaurants, etc., etc. But there are ways of doing things here that do cost, but also help you to save where you don't want to spend, and then you can invest elsewhere. For example, yesterday or the day before, we were doing lots of journeys. And remember, around Venice and its 100 and odd islands, you're going on water buses. So we bought the day pass for 25 euros rather than spending 9 euros on each journey. So that saved money. And I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but €1 and $1 are roughly the same. The same can be said for a variety of other things that we did, getting a museum package. When we went to the Doge's Palace, which is the main royal palace in St. Mark's Square, which is magnificent, we also bought entry to another 3 museums at the same time, also in the square. And so you're seeing lots and lots, but you're just able to save that little bit here and there by sort of thinking wisely.
Anything Jewish to see?
Yes, but probably many of our listeners will know that ghetto, the first ghetto, was indeed in Venice, and that the word ghetto, and there was talk about an iron foundry that was a Giotto, but the word ghetto is Italian, and this was the first place. So currently there are 3 or 4 synagogues here, plus a museum. However, and this is the but, anybody listening to this should know that until at least 2024, the museum is closed for a major refit. They say maybe 2025 that it will reopen. And also, we had the misfortune on the day that we booked the visit that there was a wedding in one of the synagogues, so we couldn't go in. And by the way, a couple of the synagogues are part of the museum. So the problem is we only actually got to see 2 synagogues on the tour, and we still paid full whack. But so bear that in mind, that it will cost, I think it was 12 euros per person, which is not a huge amount, but you're only going to see 2 synagogues. One of those synagogues is absolutely fascinating in a Sephardic style. The other one is called the Luzzatto Synagogue, which is in the Ashkenazi style. And if anyone is familiar with the name of Chaim Luzzatto, he's a rabbi who was, I think, a famous Kabbalist who ended up being buried in Acre or Akko in Israel. This is where he came from.
Can you get a good kosher lunch there?
Not in the museum itself, but yes, this is one of the fantastic things about coming to Venice if you are, shall we say, observant. And something that is really interesting and unusual, and I'll get to the food in a second, is that in many places you go in Europe, in tourism areas, you don't see people mainly wearing kippot and headgear. You certainly tend not to see ultra-Orthodox Jews in Hasidic garb walking around the streets. In the ghetto area here, you do see that. It seems to be a very open place for visitors. There are 4 potential places to eat if you keep kosher, one of which is Gam Gam. It's a meat restaurant, and I would say, from my perspective, is the best value. It's considerably cheaper than the other restaurant. Service was fine. Food was good. I definitely recommend the fried artichoke, which is fried in beer batter and topped with sesame. The second option, which is more expensive and you can eat in a garden or indoors, is a place called, get this, Baguetto. In the ghetto, which I assume meant they were going to serve baguettes, but they don't. It's a fancy meat place, but it is pricey. There are also 2 bakeries, one of which is just a straight bakery. The other one offers falafel and pizza. And in both of the dairy places, you can also pick up matzah, cheeses, and so on. So if you're making a picnic, they're a good place to start.
Sadly, as our listeners know, you're a vegetarian. Can you get by as a vegetarian there?
So first of all, when I talk vegetarian, I tend to talk about places that are strictly either vegetarian or vegan, because generally, by and large, in the world today, there is hardly a restaurant that you would go in where you can't find something, whether it's a side salad, etc. You might not get the protein you want, but there's always going to be something. But when we're looking at vegetarian places, so I've been to one because it's very close to where we're staying. It's also in the Cannaregio area, which is the area where the ghetto is. It's called Sala Luna. It's an Italian kids bookstore come vegetarian cafe. I think it would be unfair to call it a restaurant, but if you want something nice for breakfast, a lunch or dinner, it's great. Salads. They have what they call croutons, which are basically open sandwiches with a variety of cheeses. The cheeses are topped with honey, with eggplants, a variety of really, really delicious options. And for those who are vegan, there are also plenty of vegan takes too. On the main island of Venice, as far as I know, there are only 2 vegetarian/vegan places. I didn't try the second one.
Any culture for you to partake in? Music, concerts, that sort of thing?
The big treat that I gave my lady wife last night was a concert. It was absolutely fab. It was in one of the scuolas, a musical school in the middle of Venice, just a couple of minutes from the Rialto Bridge, in fact, about 60 seconds. In this particular theatre, I think it operates 6 nights a week. 3 nights a week, they perform Vivaldi's Four Seasons, but I particularly wanted to go the other time when it's an evening of opera. They're not performing full operas, they're performing arias and other famous pieces, and the concert lasts for about 90 minutes. It was top class. The 9-piece orchestra were wonderful. The performers are not only singing, they're also acting. So you get the feel of a real opera. The prices start from €30, which is incredibly cheap for anybody who's interested in going to opera and knows what the cost of tickets are. It was a really lovely evening out.
You've done a gondola.
So now you're going to say David doesn't spend any money. I decided that when it's €80 for about 20 minutes, and then you have to pay more for a gondola to sing at you, that a much better way of using the money is to simply use the water buses, etc. You see the same views, and then you walk. And you walk and you walk and you walk. And that's the best way to see this city.
With the $80 you haven't spent, I expect to see you in a new Manchester City shirt very soon then.
So we have set our hearts and our eyes on some of the famous Murano glass. And we need a very thorough debate at home as to what our budget is. But there are certain pieces that are out of this world that we adore, that we love. Debbie's a big glass fan. One of the things that we did, we went to the island of Murano, which is famous for its glass. We watched a glass blowing demonstration. We went to a place called OMG, which is the original Murano glass. Just know that they will charge you, and we felt that it was a little bit of a rip-off there. Many of the other places, you just go and watch a free glass blowing demonstration, and then the expectation is that you go into the shop and maybe pick up a few trinkets. But Murano is highly recommended, and also Burano, which is a 40-minute water bus ride away, which is a very colourful place. It's the only place where you will see lots and lots of different coloured houses, lace and so on. Also a fabulous place to buy some gifts.
So when are you taking me away?
Well, given when we're recording this, I believe in about 4 days' time, you and I will be hopping to the Baltic.
Oh, exciting. Can't wait.
Looking forward.
I'll start packing. See you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Venice Fact File. Venice Marco Polo Airport services the city and is the main airport for the surrounding region. Delta flies in from New York, El Al from Tel Aviv, and American Airlines and United offer seasonal flights from the US. There are also direct flights with Turkish, Emirates, British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, and numerous other airlines, including low-cost companies. There are several ways to get from the airport to the historic centre of the city. It takes 20 minutes on Express Bus 35, but the most exciting route is to travel by water bus. It's a 10-minute walk from arrivals to the boat terminal, with 3 routes on offer taking you to most of the tourist areas. Once in town, the best way to get around is by boat, with dozens of services on offer taking you through the city or between the various islands. There are a variety of discounted tickets available, and if you are making more than 3 journeys in a day, the day pass helps lower costs. Do not rent a car if you are not planning on venturing out of the city. Be prepared to walk lots. There are hotels around every corner, along with rental homes, many of which overlook canals. Top hotels as recommended by visitors include Moresco, Antiche Figuere, Palazzo Veneziano, and Olympia Venice from the BW Signature Collection. Venice has a humid subtropical climate with hot summers and cool winters. July and August are hot and sticky. The summer average high temperature is 28 degrees Celsius or 82 Fahrenheit. Winters can be chilly, windy, damp and foggy, with temperatures falling to an average 7 Celsius or 45 Fahrenheit. The currency is the euro. $100 will buy you 92 euros as of August 2023. Local specialities include sarde in saor, which is fried sardines dipped in fried onion, raisins and pine nuts, spices and vinegar. If you feel the need to eat pizza, we won't judge. Try out the local chain Pizzeria I Ocche. The best food markets in town are at the Rialto, an absolute must for fruit, vegetables, cheese and seafood. Kosher options include Baghetto and Gam Gam, both meat restaurants in the ghetto. There are a couple of kosher snack and bakery places also in the ghetto. For vegetarians, Sula Luna is a fabulous canal-side bistro and kids bookstore. This is the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com. Well, it sounds like you had fun in Venice.
I had an amazing time in Venice, and I'm sorry you weren't there.
I'm not. I think your wife is definitely not sorry that I didn't come on your holiday.
She likes you.
I know, but romantic holiday, and I'm sort of sat there at the end of the bed going, can we go out, David?
We weren't Three's company there, but we're about to be Three's company here. We're still in Thinkers Distillery.
It will be a hard job to get us out of here, really.
While you've been listening to Venice, we've spent time talking, getting to know the team here a bit more, and now it's time for us to do a tasting.
And by talking, David means drinking. Let me introduce you to Michael, who will take us through the range of Thinkers Distillery and educate us into what we're about to partake.
And what's his last name?
It's Guinnessar, and we have to not call him Ginnessar, even though there's lots of gin here, because he's probably so tired of that now. I mean, we've done it 3 times while we've been here.
So we've got 4 products that we're going to sample. We're going to start off with one of our gins called the Israeli Sunset Gin. Now, what the Israeli Sunset Gin is basically a New World gin. New World gin are kind of new to the spirits scene the last 20 years or so. Usually it would take a classic gin and kind of give it a twist. So this gin, distilled with rose petals and strawberries, those are going to be your main botanicals that you're going to feel, and you're going to go right into your taste buds. You're going to really feel a really aromatical, kind of floral gin, full of flavor, full of kind of sweetness that's coming from the rose petals and from the strawberries. A very elegant gin, and you're going to go taste it right now.
It smells very sweet, and maybe strawberry is a good word. As we know, my nose buds don't work very well.
It's amazing for such a big nose. It just does not work.
I love saying that.
So I've got a question here. I've had a quick taste. I tend to drink gin with tonic or with orange or with a mixer of some description. Do people drink gin without something with it?
Well, there's 2 people. One of them is Bennett, the owner of this distillery, and the other one was Winston Churchill. Most people do not really drink gin straight up. It's really a mixer. So you're going to find it in a lot of cocktails. You're going to find mixed drinks. You're going to find it with tonic. You find it with soda water. You find different options of mixing it, because all of the botanicals, the flavors are really kind of erupting while you add a mixture to it. Plus, it's a very harsh drink. The citrus on one hand, the juniper, that's the main botanical that you can find in each and every gin, is a very kind of harsh flavor. So a lot of people, it's kind of intimidating for them. They really want to mix it up with something, kind of ease it to be more drinkable.
I, of course, coughed my way through that because I'm and the wuss. But then Bennett put in the tonic water and it made a big difference and it immediately became very drinkable. What we're going to do now is what those of you who are regular listeners will know that we do once we want to get drunk. We're going to turn off the microphones, we're going to try another couple of drinks, and when we get to the final taste we'll come back to you and tell you how we're doing, or maybe not if we're horizontal. Have you listened to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition? I'm David Harris, and together with my co-host Mark Gordon, we bring you the best from the world of travel and tourism.
We have people who literally fly to Park City just to do the ski minion.
And it has that heavenly taste that you don't really find nowadays in the market.
When was the last time you went to a restaurant and they bought you a picnic basket about 8 courses in?
The Dracula tour, that's a very unusual honeymoon option, really.
The Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition brings you the joys of travel and tourism. So why not subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts?
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, David. Oh, David.
That's my line. Oh, Mark.
Oh, well, we're at the... Sorry. We're at the last tasting. We have done 2 gins and an environmentally friendly vodka where the water is taken from the air.
So it's time to find out about the last of our alcohols.
Michael, what have we got to finish off with?
What we're going to taste now is our 4th and last product, which is the Dew of Badolach bourbon whiskey. And we can actually legally call it a bourbon as we had our team distill it in the United States, in Ohio. It's what's called a wheated bourbon. So bourbons are usually going to be made from at least 51% corn. This one has wheat inside, and it's specifically done that so that we get a really full-flavored bourbon, a lot of taste, a lot of aroma. You're going to smell it, first of all. You're going to get a lot of hints of vanilla, a lot of hints of toffee. It's high proof, so it's 47.3% alcohol. We wanted to leave a lot of that flavor in the tasting. I enjoy it neat, but a lot of people like to add a cube of ice to it. But you're really getting a very, very elegant, full-flavored bourbon. L'chaim.
L'chaim. David, should we record the finish before we drink this? Because I think after 47%...
I'm just going to take you back. And folks, if you want to listen to a great podcast, go back to when we were in Łódź or Lodz in Poland, where we were trying 60% or 70% Schlivovitz. Remember that?
I don't remember much about that. I was in hospital afterwards.
He was, but we want you to know it was absolutely nothing to do with what we did in Łódź.
No, I remember Napoli, where we had that 70% limoncello.
Oh, that was also rather good.
Oh, cheers.
Bottoms up. I'm the vodka man, and I really enjoyed the vodka. But then again, I also thought that the second gin was vodka, so what do I know about alcohol? So I'll go back to you because, Mark, you're the resident alcoholic. What do you think?
Thank you so much for that title.
Catherine, Mark's wife, if you're listening, this is purely theatre. We don't mean it.
No, we've just been drinking water. This last one is coloured water. But as a thespian, I'm doing my best to pretend that this is alcohol.
So, what do you reckon?
That's good. I'm English, so I like my malt whiskey. I've got 1 bourbon on my shelf, but right. I don't go mad for bourbon. But this is very, very drinkable.
Fair enough. What more can one say?
I fully endorse what Michael said. It is a very, very good bourbon.
So what we have to do while you're sniffing the microphone, why don't you drink the microphone? What we have to do is to say thank you to our hosts at Thinkers Distillery. The website again, thinkersdistillery.com. And we want to say thank you so much indeed to our hosts, both Michael for the tasting and my head's gone. I can't
Bennett.
And thank you. I want to say Ben and Bennett for
Big Ben, because he's quite tall,
for explaining everything about this place. So thank you both.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much for having you. It was an honor.
How did you enjoy that, David?
Oh, it was terrible. What an awful evening. Or do you mean Venice?
I've forgotten about Venice. All I can think about is gin and bourbon and vodka. We are very lucky to have been given a tour of this wonderful facility, the Thinkers Distillery in Machane Yehuda on Agrippa Street. We highly recommend coming here.
And a very big thank you to both Bennett and to Michael for making us drunk, to be honest.
One of the things we love about doing this podcast, other than drinking, is people's passion about where they live, what they do, and Michael and Bennett are just so invested in this place. The vodka was outstanding, the gins were brilliant, bourbon.
You've run out of adjectives.
I don't drink bourbon, but I was able to enjoy it, and it's from America, so it's bourbon apparently.
The kosher certification, I believe it's Star Kehachsha for those of you who care about such things. I also want to say thank you to Debbie, my other half, for allowing me to spend a few minutes with Mark during our trip to Venice to talk about such a beautiful city.
And I'd like to thank my wife Catherine for going to London and allowing me to play out with my friends while she's away, being very serious.
We are actually going to be going in a few minutes from here to a couple of the Indian food places that exist in Jerusalem, which will be lots of fun. So we're off to do that. But before we do so, a couple of quiz questions for you.
Question number 1 was, where does the name gin come from? Apparently, it comes from the French name for the juniper berry, which is obviously the main ingredient in gin. And the French word is Genévre. And it's been altered by the Dutch to Genever and then shortened by the English to gin.
And if you want to correct Mark's pronunciation, the way to do so is at MarkDavidPod or markdavidpod@gmail.com. Question number 2. How many canals to the nearest 10 are there in Venice? And the answer, around about 150.
Does that include the dentists there who do root canals?
Oh my Lord.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podbean.
Did you say Spotify?
Spotify.
Big one.
Big one. Yeah, Spotify.
It's time to say goodbye.
I really apologise for David. It's like ringing out with a 3-year-old.
Oh, goodbye.
You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and now what's Twitter called? It's called X now.
X.
X. You can find us on X. This podcast is X-rated. Oh, God.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.